Hey, and welcome. You're tuning in to Unbreakable Hope with me, your host, Jessica Rose. This podcast is all about seeking the light. In each episode, we chat with someone who has either overcome the darkness or who is actively spreading light within their own community. So let's jump into today's episode. I'm really excited to introduce you to today's guest, Lynn. We have known each other now for, going on over 5 years, and it's just such a joy anytime her and I are able to get together. We share a lot of common background and our love for brain health. She is a coach, and let me tell you, after this episode, you're going to want to check her out because trust me, if something we talk about does not relate to you, I'll be surprised. Well, jump in with us on today's episode where we talk about breaking generational trauma, how we can heal, how we can learn to help those heal around us, and communicate and speak up for ourselves because all of those things are extremely important in living a quality life. Thank you so much for coming on today's episode.
Oh my God, thank you for having me. I'm so excited to be here. It's been a while since we've actually recorded anything together.
Yes, that's so true because this is how we met, was through podcast.
That's right.
And you had a podcast that I was on one of your episodes. Rossum
Yeah,
Parent.
it was Ross and parenting
Yeah.
back in the during the pandemic. Yeah, it was a while ago, but it was so nice. I never even thought about reaching out to a complete stranger online just to see if they would be willing to come on as a guest speaker. But my co-host at the time, she was just so full of gusto. So she's like, yeah, I'm gonna find people. And she did, and she found you, and I was so excited about that.
Yeah, and we've just stayed in contact ever since and been able to follow each other's journeys of this crazy thing we call life. And we were chatting a little bit before we clicked record, thinking, man, we're already like talking about these really great things, is how we've gone about our journeys. So I want to give you a minute so you can kind of introduce yourself to our audience, and then we'll jump into our conversation because I know we're going to have a lot of amazing things to talk about today.
Yeah, sure. It's always the awkward part where it's talk about myself, right? That's the short elevator pitch. But in short, for anybody who hasn't met me or isn't following me on social media, what I do is I specialize in working with people to break habits of self-sabotage, negative self-talk, and people pleasing. And a lot of times that comes from our culture or our upbringing, just the ways that we really go through these like generational patterns, seeing our mothers or our fathers and our grandparents and the way that they engage with each other. So really, I said this before with a friend of mine. I'm like, everything that I learned as a child and took into adulthood, it was based on the blind leading the blind. And so now I'm at a place where I really want to just understand and identify these patterns so that, people can break them and assert new patterns that make more sense for them.
That's amazing and such a needed conversation because the that generational piece, I think a lot of us forget. I was actually just joking about this with a friend of mine yesterday on how so many of us go through these big life changes, and it's normally around our 30s that somehow we're like, oh, we need therapy for the last 30 years of our lives to really work things out. And I just had a moment like my mom, love her to death. We had a conversation a few days ago and she said something, and I was like, so much of my life makes sense now. So right after talking with my mom, I send one of my best friends a voice message. I'm like, you are not gonna believe this. And then I tell her the whole story. And of course she texts back, she goes, oh my gosh, so much about you makes sense now. And I'm like, I know, right? But it's wild that we take so long to put in the work to recognize that, but then make the changes, right? I'm sure that
That's it.
that's the hardest thing is the first step, right?
Yeah, well, the hardest thing is to identify that pattern, even to even know where that came from. So many of us grow up thinking we're crazy. For the longest time, I just thought, well, this is normal. A lot of this is normal, and it is for who we hang out with and the people that we choose to surround ourselves with. So much of it is normalized, and even having conversations like this, where you think, oh, well, my mom did this. Oh, so did my mom, right? And then suddenly you realize you're like, and how is this okay? Because at some point in your 30s, you do realize that you're not okay. And I have written about this where I talk about the midlife crisis. So when we arrive at the point of about 38, 39 years old, a lot of people will start to look back on their lives and then they question, like, is this the legacy that I want to leave behind? Because we realize that this picture is so familiar. I've seen this before. Oh, I saw this unfold with my parents, and I've seen this unfold with perhaps my grandparents if we were lucky enough to have them around. And so am I really just continuing on with the existing legacy, or am I actually building on it? And that's the question that most of us ask in our late 30s. And so hence the midlife crisis, because now I don't know what to do. I know that there's something that I don't quite love about it, but I actually don't know what I'm supposed to do about it. And even when someone tells me, I don't know if I can.
Yeah. I love that you're using,
Yeah.
like the legacy. That's one of my big things in life when people ask me, like, what's your life goal? It's like, I want to leave a legacy. I want to be able to leave the ripple that continues on. And I just think it's a really cool thing to be able to look back and assess. And as we look back on it, I think we're doing a better job as generations come. We can dive into this more too. But I think with our age range and our age range and our group of like 30s and 40s going into that range is that based on what we were taught when we were kids and not just taught from our family systems, but like our school systems, our societal systems, right? A lot of that has changed. So now here we are, and we have kids growing up. What has changed for them? And sometimes is it for the better? Or did we completely swing the pendulum on the other side to where well, now we're having all these other issues and we need to find a middle ground?
Yeah, no, I think that's the middle ground piece because there are certainly times when I sit with some children or some families and I look at it, I think, well, we did it. We went to the other side. And the other side is the closest thing to the thing we don't want.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
so you're like, whoops, how do we correct that? You know, how personal are we getting today?
Oh, as deep as you want to go.
Yeah. I mean, when you said that you had messaged your friend and you said, I understand so much,
Yes.
I'm curious to know what was the epiphany there for you?
Okay, so first of all, Mom, if you're listening, I love you. I love you so much. So my mom says to me, apparently at some point in our conversation, it came out that, oh, this reminds me of a game my mother and I used to play. And I'm like, that's a very odd thing to say in our conversation. Now, I don't remember the context of our conversation leading up because
Mhm.
obviously my mind was completely blown after this. And I was like, a game with your mom? Like, what? And she said, yeah. Who has the worst day? And I instantly was like, oh my God, what? And she says, yeah. So my mom would call me and she would tell me about how she had this god awful day. And then it was my job to then tell her about like how my day was worse than hers, or to tell her, well, Mom, you won the worst day award. And I literally,
Oh my
I don't,
God.
I'm glad I was not on video with my mother. I don't think my mouth came off the floor. I was like the last 35 years of my life is flashing so quickly. And I'm like, oh my God, this all makes so much sense. um, because that kind of fast forwards to a lot of my self growth. And what I had to go through is my husband used to tell me, he'd say, oh my gosh, you just get so stuck in the negative. Like you're only focusing on the negative. You need to just
Mm,
like a light switch. And I'd be like, it's not that easy. Right. Which is ultimately why I ended up publishing my first gratitude journal, the train your brain, because I was honestly, I was so tired of hearing him say it. Maybe more so tired of hearing him say it than being tired of being sucked down by the negative because I didn't
mhm.
even really truly understand how toxic my own life was because it was my norm.
Right. Right. You had created a baseline that it was able to support that negativity.
Yeah. Yeah. So then, like, growing out of that and trying to focus, I'll never forget the first day I was trying to do that. I'm going to think of three things I'm grateful for a day. And then I was like, number one, uh, and then I started this and it was like kind of wintertime. I want to say it was like January, February, which is a really winter time where I'm at in Oklahoma. And I remember thinking like in the week, I was like, I'm grateful for my auto start on my car. I'm grateful for my seat warmers. And I started thinking, this is terrible. That's the best I can come up with. Like, holy smokes. And now
Yeah.
makes sense. Thanks, Mom. Thank you. And I love you so much. And it just, but then this goes back to what we were just saying, right? About the generational piece.
That's right.
That's what
That's
she got
right.
from her mom. And now that's what she had unfortunately passed on to me, not even realizing it. And she
Mm-hmm.
laughed. And even after she told me that, she's like, yeah. And then afterwards, my mom and I would just laugh. And I'm like, oh my God. And then again, I just wanted to like hug my mother's younger self
Mm.
and say, it is okay. You do not have to have these conversations. Like you can change this dialogue. And now I just that's gonna stick with me like forever. That was probably one of the biggest like growth, maybe top 10 growths that I've experienced in my life was that moment. And my mom just casually said it, like no big deal.
That's incredible. It is. They're so casual about they're casual about a lot of things, right? But I feel like it's because that was the survival coping strategy. Like if people don't understand how to speak in a different language that's laced with positivity, you have to find a way to really acclimate to that negativity. And it's even to your point, like everybody's just one-upping each other when it comes to the negative stuff. They're just like, oh, okay, but this, but this, but this, but this. And really it's just a form of trying to get validated, right? I think it's just for somebody to say, holy shit, that's so awful. And it is, of course, that's really awful. So at what point do we just pause when we hear somebody say that and just say, oh man, I'm so sorry that happened to you. And just so you know, that may have been normal in your family, but it's actually not normal for human beings to experience that much sadness or that much grief or to hold on to it. You know, it is normal because there is a lot of sadness out there and a lot of tragedy. So to some point, you know, these are normal feelings to be circulating, but it's not normal to just hold on to it and then speak lightly of it or joke around about it for that long because now it becomes this is the go-to. So yeah, and I love that you just had this immense compassion for your mom in that moment and her younger self. Did you hug her?
Well, we were on the phone.
Oh,
So hopefully she didn't see my mouth hit the floor and
air
like
hug.
not come
Yeah.
out the rest of the conversation where I was still like, I think I was talking with like my chin open, like, oh my God, so awesome. You know, like, I couldn't imagine. I was just like, oh, holy,
Oh man.
I just, it was wild. And, you know, I love my mother so much, even after, you know, all this thing in life. She thinks she was this horrible, god awful mother. And I'm just like, you're not, you know, like what, like, and then that's where I hate that for her because she's kind of trapped in that. And I want so much for her to see the mother that I saw, the mother that I got. And it's hard to be able to you can't change anybody else, right? As much as we think we can, or as much as we want to, we can't. But we can show them love, and we can try and change the script. So, like you were just saying, that's the number one advice I give people when they're doing suicide interventions is validate, don't relate. And I think
Hmm.
that's something that my mother missed a lot in her childhood was the validation on a bad day is sometimes
Hmm.
just taking that moment and saying, that really sucks. I hate
That's right.
you. Yeah.
That's right. Yeah, just so somebody feels seen in it and not eclipsed by somebody else's bad day and and then even if they didn't have a worse day and you realize yours was an awful day, okay, and then what?
Yeah.
And so that's it. That's it. You just had a shitty day. Like you just had a bad sorry, am I allowed to swear on here?
Oh
I
yeah,
actually
I think I've dropped the F
yeah.
bomb already.
And so yeah, and so you had a bad day. So then what? As a child, what are you supposed to do with that? So you just say, okay, that's it.
Yeah.
Swallow it, eat it up, chew. I don't know what it is, but yeah. And oh gosh, I think I've had conversations with my mom too, where I've shared some moments in childhood and realizations that I've had as an adult. And it wasn't until I was married and then divorced that I was able to finally get her attention on a real level where she could listen to me as an adult. Because prior to that, she was often talking about how, well, you wouldn't understand what it's like to be in a marriage, you wouldn't understand what it's like to have to make these difficult decisions. And so perhaps she was right at the time and I couldn't. And it didn't mean that what I was saying was invalid. But after I had left my marriage, one of the things that I did say to her was, okay, now we're at a place where you and I do have some similar experiences as adults. So let's level up on this, right? Let's have a conversation because here's the thing. Two things can be true at the same time. You could have been a very devoted wife and mother, and you could have really, been happy and grateful to have that experience and really loved it. And on the other hand, it could have been really hard for you at the same time. It could have been the biggest challenge of your life to manage so many people's feelings, wanting to make decisions that were selfish and not being able to bring yourself to do it because you made commitments to people. So I understand this. I understand that you were both torn and blessed at the same time. So the same thing for me. When I look at you as a mother and I have these experiences as a child, they're not awful, but some of the things that I'm realizing, they weren't healthy.
Ah, yeah.
Right? We did some really unhealthy things as a family. The way that we communicated or didn't. What we called communication was really just sweeping things under the rug or prioritizing respect, this blind respect over having an open dialogue and being honest with each other. Okay, so that didn't work for me because it really impacted the way that I showed up as an adult. And I'm not blaming you for it. I'm just simply saying that these were the things that we learned that were unhelpful. But it doesn't make you a horrible mom. Like you were an amazing mother. I understand your sacrifices. I understand what you had to give of yourself to raise us and to be a wife. And I think that those are also incredibly significant. So I'm not minimizing you as a mother. I just want to acknowledge that there are things that we can work on as a family. And it's not too late to do that.
I
We
love
have
that.
time.
Yeah, acknowledging, not blaming. I think that's huge because I think within my own family, there's members that are on the blame train. And instead of just acknowledging, like I always think like we're doing the best we can with what we have in the moment. And I look at that for my mom with everything that she'd gone through. We just expect for somebody to just change overnight. No, it takes a lot of work to put into it. Like self growth is worth it, but it's hard. It's also, I think, hard on some aspect to stay where you are. But like you said, the hard part is recognizing where it's coming from so then you can try and fix it and move forward from that and not pass that on to other relationships. And we're not just talking about like parent-child relationships, spousal relationships, work, business relationships, right? It if our core beliefs and our core values and how we communicate affect all
That's
relationships.
right. That's right. Friendships too. I recently had this moment with a friend of mine and it was through texting, but and it's pretty fresh. But one of the things that I was realizing is like no matter how much time you spend working on yourself and evolving yourself, we operate in parts as this is the work that I do, where I work with people in parts. And this is why healing is so hard and it takes such a long time. It's because maybe I healed my inner 6-year-old, but my inner 8-year-old or my inner 16-year-old is still in there. And there are different sets of core beliefs that she's operating from and experiences that she's operating from. And so depending on who's in front of us and what's happening, it triggers different parts of us, right? So, and we don't realize it. So this recent event that happened with a friend of mine, there was like a lot of rescheduling. And this is kind of like a pattern that's happened over the years where and it's not always because she's like this incredible friend. She shows up for such big moments in my life and she is one of my biggest supporters. But then there is this tendency every now and then to constantly reschedule things. And I'm like, I understand that things come up and life happens. And then when I see things happening in the background where it creates this belief within me or it triggers this belief in me that says, okay, well, you're not you're not well enough or free enough to keep the commitment that we made months ago, but you are well enough and free enough to commit to this thing and show up for this thing. And so then it creates this questioning inside of me. And so the way that I showed up in the message that I had sent was saying like, I don't appreciate being a last priority. You know, I'm not somebody that just gets shifted around in somebody's schedule. I also have a lot going on in my life. And that was sort of that mentality that I took around it. And the response was, you know, I'm so sorry. Like, that's not what I mean. And to hear that is like, it was almost like saying it's unfair because I do show up for other things. I was like, I'm not trying to minimize the things that you do show up for. I'm not saying that, but there is a pattern. And what I need in this is some accountability, right? Because if I don't say that, what's happening is like my initial message that was sent out, when I reread it, I said, oh, this feels like a 16-year-old or an 18-year-old speaking, you know? It feels like somebody who everybody kept thinking, well, she's really easygoing. She's super understanding. She's going to get it. And so of all the people that I'm going to rearrange in my schedule, let me reschedule her. It will have the lowest impact on my life if I do that. And my inner teenager was saying, okay, sure, I can go with that. And because I love you, I want the best for you. But what does that mean about me and where I sit in your list of priorities?
Yeah. And being able to
Right?
speak up for that, because I think that's a huge thing that we miss on a regular basis. So I loved how you describe it, the dynamics of that, you know, like that teenage self, like where you're kind of unsure, you're wanting to fit in, you're wanting the acceptance, but you're also like, but I have my own wants and needs. And being able to communicate that and say, hey, I know you have a lot going on in your life, but there's a lot going on in my life too. Like, and just being able to have that conversation. There's so many people that I know personally that will shut down with something like that and feel like you're
Right.
attacking them. And it's like, it's not an attack. I'm just trying to express where I'm at and make sure I'm taking care of myself. Because if I didn't care about this relationship, I wouldn't be saying that.
Exactly. Exactly. And my initial thought was like, don't say anything at all. Just be like, okay, no problem.
Mm.
And I said, well, that's not honoring that part inside me that doesn't feel like this is fair and that feels like there's a bit of,
Yeah.
um, you know, like feels overlooked a little bit, right? And so I said, okay, I'm going to say it. But then it was my inner teenager that said it, and it didn't come out eloquently, or it didn't come out, perhaps lovingly. And then when I got the response, there was like this part of me that wanted to just avoid the whole thing. And I said, you know what, just leave it. They're not going to understand. They're not taking it the way that I mean it. So just forget it. They don't, it doesn't matter. Just forget it. This will pass. And then the adult part of me was like, well, that's the pattern, right?
Yeah.
That's the pattern. When you feel misunderstood, you just want to be like, forget it. Who cares? And so this was what I learned in childhood. It's like, don't bother. If they don't understand that, they're not going to understand. And I thought it's not about that. It's about just putting it out there and coming from a place, because my values as an adult is to say things as lovingly as possible and to come from a place of love.
Mm.
And I thought if I leave that, that's not loving, right? If I leave that and just leave them hanging, that's not quite loving. So let's go back and let's just get a little bit more clear. It's not to explain, it's to take accountability for the way that things were phrased, and it's also to reassure them that this is just because this is how I feel, it doesn't mean that I don't love you. And it doesn't mean that I don't want to be your friend or that I don't ever want to hang out again. I just think that this is for the best. This is what we're going to do. Or this is what I'm going to do. And I'm going to do it for the sake of our friendship, which is to say, let's not make any future commitments until things are okay on your end. Right. And I don't know, like this is very fresh. This literally happened like from last night to this morning. So I haven't had the response, but what I'm seeing in myself in these interactions is just the ability to go back and find those patterns. Like when we're talking about patterns, there are patterns of communication. There are patterns of like what we do after we're hurt
Oh,
or feel slighted or overlooked or misunderstood. And I'm so aware of these days because sometimes I'll do it I'll let the 16-year-old part take over, or I'll let the 21-year-old part take over, and all these younger parts of me just decide they're going to come front and center and take care of a situation. And then I thought, because now the 46-year-old me is sitting here saying, I don't, okay, okay, that happened. What can we do now to maybe disrupt the pattern of just leaving it?
Mm.
Because how many of us get through this or experience these moments where it feels like we made a mistake and then it's too late? It's not too late. Reconciliation is, there's no such thing as too late for that.
100%. I had that experience with a friend and we were really close. She didn't deal well with confrontation. And I remember it just felt off. Something had felt off for a while. And there was a particular, I want to say it was like a 2, 3 week time span where I was trying to spend time with her, but it never seemed like she had time to spend with me alone, which was unusual. So I'm like, okay, something is going on. But I'm like, how do I address this without shutting her down? So I did what I've done before with certain relationships. I wrote a letter. But then I kept I didn't send it. There was like 3 letters. I literally like printed one out to put it in the mailbox, like send it, like old school send. And then I was just like, I like you were saying, that inner me does not feel like I am actually getting out what I need to get out. Because I feel like and I don't want to say walking on eggshells, because I don't feel like that's how that person ever made me feel. Like I never felt like I had to walk around eggshells around her. But I feel like I took her feelings and I was playing in my head what her reaction would be, what her emotions would be, how her communication would be. I put that ahead of my own.
Mm,
There was finally one day, something had happened, and I just said, you know what? I'm just going to get it out. It was like a post-workout 6 a.m. email situation where I said, you know what? And I try and caveat a lot of my conversations. I mean, I'm not perfect, but I try and caveat, like, especially when I'm calling friends, like, I need to vent, blah. I need support, blah. I need help fixing situation. So I did my little caveat, like, this is raw, this is real, this is fresh, these are my emotions, buckle in, right? Um, so I was really surprised. The response was, hey, I need some time to digest all this. And I was like, oh, okay,
love that.
like
Mhm.
sweet. But then I feel like there was so much hurt in such a short amount of time between the both of us without either person really realizing that this hurt had taken place. So by the time a big event had occurred, and I am keeping this a little bit vague for
Of
privacy
course.
of the friendship.
Sure.
But there was a big event that occurred that shouldn't have been as bad as it was had this other not been built up.
Hmm.
There was clearly some things going on that weren't communicated. So by the time I recognized some things, it's like, okay, and I never want to say anything's too late, but it got to a point where it's going to take a lot more work and effort and time to heal that and rebuild that relationship. And it's kind of unfortunate, but I'm a firm believer, and this kind of goes into like my care for my husband is can my soul rest with the decisions I've made for the day? And I was
Mm,
not resting easy when I wrote those letters that I never sent. Every time I thought about it, I couldn't like it hurt me more. So I had to be able to communicate something to get it out there to heal myself and give the other person a chance to heal and give us a chance to both heal from the the situations that had occurred. So I think that that's important for people to remember too, is that if it's something keeping you up at night, if it's something you're dreaming about and not in the good way, stressing about, all that kind of stuff, then you got to find a way to communicate it. And as simplistic, or I don't know if it's simplistic, maybe it's like backwards as it feels, right? It's like writing a letter versus having a face-to-face conversation. You're at least getting it out there and you're giving that other person an opportunity to have some type of resolve or action going forward, like you said with your friend, like, hey, this is what I need for me, and I care about this friendship. Well, the other person in your situation or my situation could just not respond and say, oh, I'm out.
That's right.
At this. Like, I don't, I'm not okay with this, or how dare she? And it's like, well, we said the things we said because we care. If we didn't care, then
That's right.
we'd be the one ghosting. We'd be the one cutting off the
Oh
relationship.
my gosh. You don't even know. Like my go-to attachment style is avoidance, right? So when I look at something, I often ask myself, is this worth it? And so if I'm leaning into a conversation or creating an opportunity, inviting a conversation, then I do think it's worth it, right? And I will fight for it until it feels like there's no fight left to give. What you were sharing earlier about your friend, I totally get that because it is about prioritizing the other person's feelings or how they might react over what we're currently experiencing. And we do that so often. We take responsibility for somebody else's experience, and it really invalidates their sense of autonomy or intellect. And we don't even realize that. We're hijacking it, right? We're saying, I know what's better for you than you do, and I don't. And I don't know what you're capable of. Truly, even if I've known you for forever, there are friends of mine who have been friends with me for over 30 years, and they still surprise me. And because in my mind, I think, okay, well, they're probably going to react like this, but I'm basing it off of historical experiences, not even about who they're trying to become or who they have become. And so that's the first mistake that I think a lot of us make in relationships is that we assume to know what the other person is going to feel or behave like,
Mm.
right? And then we take responsibility for that. We're like, I'm going to take that right off your hands. So I'll do that, right? But this kind of behavior creates these little kinks in the foundation. So if you imagine a house, like if there is an earthquake, if there is whatever, a natural any kind of disaster, right? That could impact a house. If the foundation is strong, the foundation will remain. You just rebuild from the other pieces, right? But when there's chinks or cracks in the foundation, yeah, like any little thing is going to disturb it. Any little thing is going to weaken it and break it down. And so when we don't say what we mean and we don't say how we feel, um, or we don't mean what we say and we don't mean what we feel, right? Then this is what creates all these little fine cracks in the foundation. And so one other catastrophic event will actually dismantle the whole thing if we're not careful. So having these it's the little things that add up, and people have said this over time, but it truly is. Because if we're not taking care of whatever it is that we really value and hold most dear in a relationship, none of it will matter at the end of it all. Like we can overlook all the little things and think it's just little. I won't say anything. I won't say anything. And then the big thing becomes a huge thing, you know? Whereas the big thing, if we were already strong in our communication and we were really strong in our intentions and our delivery and the way that we connected on a regular basis, the big thing is actually quite manageable. So another friend of mine very recently, oh my gosh, like I don't know, lately I've had these really protesty and petulant parts of me come forward, and they acted really, and so I recognize them and I'm trying to understand what needs I'm overlooking of myself. But so I went for a dinner with a bunch of girlfriends not too long ago, and one of my best friends was sitting across from me. So it was like a diagonal, and there was about seven of us, right? So it's quite some distance. And somebody was telling a story, and then she chimed in and she just disrupted the whole story and predicting the ending. And I don't know what part of me it was, but suddenly I was just like, just let her effing finish. I screamed this. We're in public, and I scolded my friend. And the reaction on her face, it was so like shocked. And in that moment, I said to myself, oh yeah, I have to address that. That was pretty harsh. But then the story went on a really long time, and then other conversations took over. And then I completely forgot that I had done that because I wasn't the one that got scolded. So I didn't remember. I just did it, and then it happened. Well, months later, my friend comes to me and she says, hey, I was just, and we've hung out since then and everything's been fine. But I think she really had to think about it and whether or not it was worth bringing up. But she did. She says, hey, there's something I want to talk to you about. And like I've been thinking whether or not it's worth it to talk about or if it's necessary because when this happened, I wasn't surprised because it was you. And then she says, but then I was surprised because it was you. So I'm like, so was this a matter of you weren't surprised because of who I used to be, but you are surprised because of who I am and who I'm trying to become? And she said, yes. I said, I know what moment you're talking about. And she said, you do. I go, now that you've said it, it's just created this flashback. And it was at the dinner table when I scolded you. She said, yes. Oh my God. So okay. Thought I was crazy because I was like, did I do something bad? And I said, did it feel like you were a child in the most? She goes, it did. And I go, and it felt like I was a mother scolding a child. Right. And I said, here's the thing. It was completely uncalled for. Like you did nothing wrong. And I still don't quite know what that was about, but I do know that I owe you an apology for that. And it's long overdue. I'm glad you brought it up and gave me the opportunity, right, to reconcile this. And that is what it is with friendships and with any relationships. When someone brings it up, it's not to blame us or to hurt us or accuse us. It's really to get some understanding of saying like, do you still love me? Yeah. So really, I like what you were saying earlier, it is an opportunity. Like people want to give us the opportunity to, I don't know, either reassure them that we do love them, that we aren't mad at them, that they didn't do anything bad, because the very evolved version of myself knows that this isn't how we want to manage our friendships and our relationships anymore. But it doesn't mean that there won't be moments where old parts of me will emerge and act in these old ways, right? And so whenever somebody gives me that opportunity, I'm so grateful. And so I think it's also our duty as daughters, wives, aunties, friends, whatever it is, to give the people that we love the opportunity to let's get clear on this so that we aren't leaving it on the floor and creating these little divots in the foundation of our relationship.
Yeah, that's huge. And that ties into so many things we were just talking about, right? Is that there's times, like in the moment, you had forgotten about it. You didn't have the emotional tie, but your friend did. And your friend later brought it up because she cared about the relationship. And then once it was brought up, you were both able to heal from a situation that it had passed. And I've probably had these moments too where I'll think of something, I'm like, why did I just say that? Or why did I just do that? But then something distracts me. Or as you said, that conversation kind of continued on. And then it was like, oh, okay. But then your friend was holding this thinking, what?
Oh,
But then you also brought up the great point of it surprised you for based on who I was or who I'm becoming, because I think that is something that, especially in like romantic relationships, but also friendships too, is that we can grow apart, but I think we grow apart because we don't accept the growth path that we're both on. And we can find like we still have the same values, or we share some of the similar beliefs or maybe hobbies or whatever the case may be, but then as one person is growing and trying to change for whatever the betterment looks for them, sometimes the other person struggles with that acceptance of
that's right.
used to be this, huh, I don't like that it's becoming this. And
Hmm.
then eventually that's where things start to split. But then it goes right back to what we were saying, right? Is it's because we're not communicating and we're not bringing up when things happen. And we're either letting them build up and still not bringing them up, or we let them build up to the point to where it's too hard to have that conversation. So we'd rather be the one to just split and ghost and be done than actually
Hmm.
invest the time and work into healing and growing the relationship.
Yeah, somebody said to me the other day, they're like, "Oh, this is really hard. Like, can't we just keep skimming the surface?" I said, "Absolutely. You can keep doing whatever you want to. If it's working for you and you're content with it, you just stay wherever you are. That's completely fine." Now, for the martyrs and for the masochists, like the ones of us who really like want to get into that hard part, dive in because I promise you it is not easy. It's freaking hard to do that. And to your point, when you say like you can be in the same relationship and you've been married long enough to see this, right? Like I'm watching your journey unfold is has been incredible because you my lady, are so full of tenacity. And I have very, it's so hard for me to articulate the way that I respect and admire the way you've shown up in your life, not just for you and for, your audience or for the people out there that you're trying to help, but, in your marriage, I've gone through a very short version of caretaking. And it takes everything in you
Yeah.
because you are suddenly wearing so many hats. So that's all to say this. Like when we start on a journey or a relationship with somebody, we are a different person. But the longer you stay with someone, the more versions of you start to evolve and get introduced into the relationship. And so, 5 years in, I'm realizing maybe I don't like you that much. Maybe I liked you 5 years ago because I was younger, my circumstance was different, I had a different set of standards for a relationship, and then maybe I didn't need much, right? Or I didn't expect much. But now 5 years in, we're developing habits that I don't really like within our relationship.
Mm,
And I'm starting to notice patterns that aren't healthy and I want to address them. Now, if you're not on the same page of addressing them and evolving them with me, we have a problem because we are not the same people that started out the relationship together and we have to accept that,
yeah.
right? And now you fast forward, okay, if we don't do that in 5 years and we don't do that 7 or 8 years, 10 years comes along, it's like, how have we allowed ourselves to acclimate to these unhealthy patterns? Somebody's got to do something, right? And I want to do something now. You can do it with me or you don't have to. Like there's always a choice. You don't have to do it with me. Now, if you choose not to do it with me, I have to think about how I'm going to proceed then. Whether that's in a marriage or a friendship or whatever, we just aren't. Like my friends and I, we've been friends for over 30 years, like 36 years now. And we know all of the you know we've been there for all the bad times, all the hard times, all the fun times. And we've had times when we have had to take breaks from each other, and it was so necessary because, man, some of my friends, we even admit, like, I didn't like you when I was 17. You were not a likable person. We're like, no, I wasn't. I was going through some things and you weren't likable when you were 20 something years old. But, after some time, we come back and we realize, okay, 2 years have evolved. I've evolved. You've evolved. Let's see if we can reconnect now. Let's see if we share the same values and we have the same vision for what a relationship looks like. Now, when you're in a marriage for 18 years, 10 years, however long it is, we make this commitment for better or for worse. So we really can't be like, okay, well, let's just take this break, Karen. I'll see you in 4 years, right? See how it goes. Like, we don't have that luxury. We now have to figure out how to do that within the confines of our four walls. So, and based on the circumstances, like, I mean, how are you doing with all of that?
It's definitely it's been a challenge and it's been a lot of growth for me personally. And I think kind of like what you were saying is one of the big things. So when my husband and I when we first started dating, we talked about a lot of the deep stuff where it's like, let's get skeletons out in the closet. If you still want to talk to me, great. If you don't, I don't have time for this anymore, right? And so I think that definitely helped is kind of just laying the groundwork and also both of us saying like we're those people that we want we want to fix any breaks and we don't want to get to the point to where it's gone far beyond. So with that, we're not perfect. No one's perfect, but it was still, hey, this is the person I love. I'm still willing to work through these things. And actually, right before his brain cancer diagnosis came back, we were dealing with a rather big issue that we both just couldn't quite see eye to eye. I'm a very it's black and white. There's a rule. You follow the rule or you change the rule. And my husband lives in the gray area. So
Yeah.
when I'm talking about a big issue, that's what we were dealing with. It was just like right? But it was kind of typical situation. Well, anyway, over this journey and having to become his caregiver and really getting to where I became his caregiver kind of about 5 years ago. But then like, holy smokes, he's total care. He's in a wheelchair. He's nonverbal. Like I do everything for him, for his son, for the household, like all this stuff. There was a part where I had to come to terms with, okay, I can't get angry. I can't get mad and think, wow, if roles were reversed, my friends and I joke about it, right? If roles were
Hmm.
reversed, I would be dead by now, right? Is that we truly, truly believe, and I love my husband, but we
Yeah.
believe he would not have been able to do the things I had to do for him, for me. Some of that also came with his prior brain cancer and all of the things that I learned over time were actually just coping skills, not personality. Because some things I totally thought were personality with him. But I had to come with those deep terms of this is how I love. This is how I choose to love. And I can accept that. And I can let go any thought, like circling back to what we talked about before, too, right? Is I can think of if roles are reversed. I can assume, I can make up this grandiose story in my head
Yeah.
about how he would have cared for me, but that does nobody good in this moment. That creates emotions and falsehoods that I just don't have time for. So focusing on this is how I love. And at the end of every day, especially when things were really, really tough, I would just say, can my soul rest with the decisions I've made today? And if it can't, giving myself the grace, forgiving myself, and saying, okay, when I wake up in the morning, I will fix this. I will
Hmm.
change this or that, and I will move forward. And I think that that's a huge growth. And I've had to continue to grow in this process. I've been asked, I've been asked numerous of times why he is not in a facility because he does require 24/7 care. And my simple answer is my soul cannot rest. I could
Hmm.
not rest through the night leaving him in a facility. So having to have some of the fun conversations with people where I just think back and I'm like, really, no one else has brought this up before? Like, it's wild. When they were pushing a hospital bed on me, I said, well, where do I sleep?
Hmm.
I was like, well, what do you mean? I'm like, well, where do I sleep? I'm in my 30s. This is my husband. Like, we get a hospital bed. It's a twin size bed. There's no room for me. And it was just like, people were like, what? I don't understand. So bringing that up to people time and time again and getting I never thought about that makes me want to continue to bring it up because that means not enough people are having the conversation and bringing up how this affects all the other dynamics.
Absolutely. Holy cow. Good for you because it's true. And maybe they don't bring it up because people wouldn't stick around the way that you do.
Mm.
Perhaps it's just not normal or a normal experience for them. And because like I said, it takes a lot of tenacity, right? It takes a lot of and what I really appreciate about you is since I've met you and we've had our random conversations or sporadic, I don't say random, sporadic conversations, right? You are somebody who puts integrity above all else. I think that for you, honoring your own values has always been at the top of your priority list when it comes to your relationships. And this is just another example of that. You're like, I don't care how other people do it, and I don't care what other people think I should be doing. I'm doing what I feel aligns with my own values, right? And this is what brings me peace at the end of the day. This is how my soul feels at peace at the end of the day. So sure, you can have your opinion, but I need my bed. I'm going to need you to wheel something in here. Get me my bed,
Yeah.
right? Like you certainly probably pay, you probably pay enough for that room to get that extra, like put that damn bed in here, And and it's more than that. Coming home and being a full-time 24/7 caretaker, it's because for you, you're right. We can't project into this like, well, what if? And that's the thing that always gets people into so much trouble.
Yes.
We're
Yeah.
looking at, okay, well, what if it was me? Well, thank God it's not.
Mhm.
That's the other thing about opportunities. And I think that this is something I've learned over the years, the last decade for sure, is that it's both a burden and a privilege to be somebody who gets to take care of someone we love, right?
Yes.
It's hard work and it does hinder a lot of the quote unquote fun that we want to have, or we do have to apply a lot of sacrifice to taking care of our loved ones, but we get to take care of our loved ones.
Yeah.
If I was in a place where I couldn't physically do it or mentally do it, oh my gosh, like how sad would that be?
Yes.
Because of the way that I love, I would want nothing more than to be able to be the person who takes care of somebody who needs me.
Yeah. And that's
And
how
genuinely.
I've had to deal with that over the years because I have my own injuries. You know, I've had 9 surgeries and sometimes just struggling naturally. I have RA and I have to do so think about rheumatoid arthritis, lots of
Oh
immune
man.
stuff. Stress, even with cancer, right, makes it worse. I live a very highly stressful life. And at one point, my husband and I were living in the hospital for about 5 months. And I say we because I was with him. I couldn't leave him. I had experiences that proved why I couldn't leave him. So having to find ways to be able to live the lifestyle that I have to live so I can physically move and function in my ultra high stress environment is difficult. With my other injuries, I have a worn out disc in my lower back. And for the longest time, I'm still battling with the VA on getting an ADA vehicle. I think I've finally made some progress after 3 years of battling for this. I was physically trying to lift my husband, who's like 185, off the
Mm,
ground to my SUV seat while I'm like a 115er. So for those who have never seen us in person, and you can't really tell those in pictures sometimes, it was a strain and I re-injured my lower back really bad and I had to go to the doctor and get put on a few different meds to be able to wake up in the morning. And that's where it's like it's those moments are kind of like a wake up call where I'm like, okay, I got to change something because I have to be at my best level to keep him
mm-hmm,
alive. And
mm-hmm.
not just keep him alive, like keep him breathing, keep him alive in a quality of life state. Because I think that's a whole nother conversation we could dive into is all of us have a different definition of quality of life. And what
Absolutely.
people think is not what I think, is not what my husband thinks. My husband and I have different definitions of quality of life. So, really, over these past 5 years, finding a way to where I still have quality of life because that's something
Mm-hmm.
that I got so focused on his quality of life, I forgot my own. And
Oh,
I
the
took my,
tribulations of a caretaker.
yes, yes. I took my first vacation last fall, and one of my best friends, she said, "You need a break." And I said, "I know." And she says, "No, like really, really, you need a break." Her and her mom were going to Italy for 2 weeks. And mind you, I don't I just started working again and I travel a lot for work. So I was starting to take contracts and be gone for like a week, week and a half in the US, where I had plans on how quickly I could get to a rental car and drive home every trip I
Mhm.
made. So I'm gonna go to Italy for 2 weeks. I was like, okay, maybe I can do like one week. Maybe I'll commit to just like the one. And I'll see. And then I think it was like a week out. I had already been building my plan and I was anxious and I didn't know what to do. I said, you know what? I'm just gonna do it. I got my flight with rewards and I said, I'm going to go to Italy for 2 weeks. And it was glorious. I was still on call. I was still scheduling with the home health and the caregivers and all that stuff. I can't turn my phone off. I can't completely check out. But that physical break out of my environment, whew, that helped sustain me for a couple months. And it was really a wake up call for me to say, I need the physical break from my environment on a regular basis to keep me going and increase my quality of life to keep him at a quality of life that he wants.
Oh my gosh. Yes. I'm so glad that your friend asserted herself in that situation. Thank goodness for friends that do that, right? Because it's so easy to get tunnel vision when you're in there, and then it's you that's placing all these expectations on yourself. We talked about this before you started recording, but we talked about comparing, right? It's like the comparison of, well, he has it off worse than me, so what am I complaining about? Girl, you got a long list of physical ailments that really need tending to. And at this point, you're the only one who can tend to them. So I'm so glad that you're taking breaks because you're no good to anybody when you're doing that. We have this internal foundation too that we really have to take care of. So I'm glad. I'm glad. So where did you go in Italy?
Oh my goodness. We went to Rome, Florence, and Venice. Yeah. So we did kind of like the three big cities. It was so much fun. It was fun just waking up and bless my friend. Like I have an amazing support system. So shout out to my circle of besties and everyone who has just been a support that she planned the whole thing. And some of the tours that her and her mom were on, you know, because like I said, I fully committed like a week or 2 weeks out. So some of the tours were already full. And I'm like, it's cool. I can walk around by myself. It's fine. Which is also weird because like 20-year-old me would have been like, you know, 30s me is like, hell yeah. So I just got up and was like, hey, I am happy to be a follower on this trip. I'm happy for you to pick where we eat, where we go, and good on her because she is really great at like no like making decisions and stuff.
Organizing, yeah.
Yes. So that was great. It was wonderful. And we had a couple other friends that are in my close circle that met us over there. They did the whole quit their job, travel the world thing for a couple years. So they're like, oh, we'll just catch up with you. And it was such a great experience. And even on the days where it was raining and by the end of the trip, it got drastically cold and it poured down rain on us and we were not packed and prepared for that. So her and I got sick like on the way home. And we were all
Oh
scared like, trying to get
no.
on the flight. We're like, look, I'm in like sundresses and it was like 50 degrees. Um, it was still so much fun. And it was just, it was great. It's beautiful. If no one's ever been there, I've now got to go twice. I've been in Rome before for like 28 hours. That's a whole nother story. But it was also fun then too. Also with another best friend who is a complete champion in my life. So it's great. It's great to be able to explore other cultures and try different things, broaden your experiences, broaden your thought processes. I love it. I've always wanted to travel my entire life. So that was very, very, very fulfilling in so many different aspects of what.
Yeah. Got to do it again.
Yeah, yeah.
Rinse and repeat. We had to rinse
Oh
and
yeah.
repeat, right? Yeah.
Already planning my next trip. Like, yeah.
Amazing. Amazing. Oh, that's so great. I'm happy to hear that. Like when I think about going on vacation or just taking that physical break that you're talking about, it is really necessary because somebody was asking me to describe accountability. And so for me, I was like, okay, accountability is kind of like this, you're about to cross the road at a crosswalk and you know that you have the right of way. So cars that are coming up to a crosswalk with a flashing light or whatever, they have to slow down or stop, right? So you are like, okay, well, this is the way it works. This is the black and white of it. I'm going to cross the street because I have pushed the button, the light is flashing, everyone should know. So you cross without looking and a car hits you.
Mm,
Who's at fault,
yeah,
right? The law will say it's the car's fault.
yeah,
But accountability says, well, it's your job to look out for yourself because the only person who suffers the long-term consequences of that impact is you. And so you can keep blaming the driver who didn't stop, but the accountability of taking care of ourselves falls on us. So it's like when I know that there's a chance of what I'm doing, if there's a chance that what I'm doing is going to put me in danger or in harm's way, I have to be mindful of that
yeah. Oh, that's a beautiful example. Such a beautiful example. I love that so much. I feel like we could, I mean, we've made such great,
forever.
like we could just talk forever and ever. I know we're coming up on our time though, and I just want to give you some space if there's something that you want to make sure our audience knows. Obviously, links will be included below on how to contact you and your lovely book, but I want to give you an option if you have some final thoughts or maybe some wrap up stuff to give to our listeners.
Yeah, no, I think that what we talked about today was so important and probably really relevant for a lot of people. And it does go with what I recently wrote in my book, Self-Reckoning. It's about embracing the journey beyond 40 and divorce. It's a personal memoir, but it also highlights a lot of experiences that I think people in their, late 30s or their mid 30s will start to experience if they haven't already. We talked about the midlife crisis and a lot of identity pieces are introduced in this book of mine. And so it's been a passion project for a while. And it's what drives a lot of the conversations that I have these days with people. It's just more meaningful when I understand what my purpose is for having gone through some of these really big and difficult experiences. And being able to come out on the other side of it with a perspective of love and compassion and empathy and forgiveness, I think has been monumental in me being able to see the silver lining in so many situations, right? So it's a book that I'm really proud of. You can get it on Amazon, and it's available in North America, over in the UK, Australia, all these other places. So you can certainly get the Audible version. There's the Kindle version and the paperback version. So I'd love that. And I love that for me, and I love that for everybody else who's going to get it.
I love that
Um,
on
yeah,
Audible because I'm an Audible person with
that's
all the books
right.
behind me. I love my Audible books.
That's right. Yeah. So I'll hook you up with that after this. And for anybody who is getting the book or who already has the book, please also give me a review. I can't ask for it, straight up, but I would really love to hear some feedback on that. I am in the works of writing a second book. It's the prequel to this one, and it talks about where do all of these patterns emerge from? Where do they originate? And how do we forgive our mothers? How do we forge new relationships with them? And how do we help to heal their inner child along the way as we heal ourselves? So I'm excited to write that book, and the hope is that I release it next year. But in the meantime, I think that's really all there is. I appreciate you inviting me on here so that we can have some real candid conversations about life. And yeah,
Yeah. I'm
that's
so
it.
excited that you're here and we had this lovely chat. Like I said, I knew we were going to cover so many different things and that it was just going to be so impactful. And I'm so excited we've stayed in contact all these years. It's a wild thing, this life. And that's where when people talk about technology, I'm grateful for it because I'm grateful to be able to have bonds like ours to still connect and support each other. And I'm so excited to hear that your book is on audio because I'm definitely going to listen to it. So that review is going to be coming up for me for sure.
Man, awesome. Yeah, thank you so much. And yeah, we'll stay in touch for sure.
Yeah, sounds great.
Okay. Bye, Jessica Rose.
Thank you, listeners, for tuning in. If you found this episode inspiring, please share it with someone you never know who needs more light in their life. May this serve as a reminder that there's always darkness in the world. Do not let it consume you. Always seek the light. Please take a moment to do the good old subscribe, rate, and review. Your support means so much to me and it helps me spread more light and love. Until next time, be kind, be loving, be human, and don't ever let anyone steal your hope.